Islamic State militant group calls for more terror attacks against Christians through its propaganda magazine. This follows the killing of a priest in France, which has sparked fears ISIS wants to incite a religious war.
It's less than a full day after the Islamic State militant group called for more terror attacks against Christians and launched a bizarre attack on the Pope. The extremist and militant group is now threatening to kill Russian President Vladimir Putin.
The Islamic State militant group has called for more terror attacks against Christians. The cover of the latest issue of the group's Dabiq magazine, released on Sunday, shows an ISIS member ripping a cross off the roof of a church with the title "Break the Cross." In the magazine, ISIS calls on others to join the terror group and for its members in Western countries to attack Christians without hesitation, citing the latest attacks by jihadists in Orlando, France, Germany, and Bangladesh as examples. The magazine also seeks to explain the group's recent terror attacks and suggests the cross worshippers and democratic pagans of the West should repent by abandoning Christianity and accepting Islam. The magazine's release comes amid a heightened state of alert in Europe and the U.S. after the killing of the French priest and a string of other ISIS-inspired attacks. Analysts see the statements as part of the militant group's efforts to cast itself as a protector of Muslims and incite a religious conflict between Christians and Muslims.
3 Chinese Navy fleets conducted a drill in the East China Sea to test combat readiness. The combined drill involved ships, jets, submarines, and coastal defense forces. It was led by the East China Sea Fleet and joined by the South China Sea Fleet and the North China Sea Fleet. Scores of missiles and torpedoes were fired in the simulated battle scenes. The entire exercise was carried out under heavy electromagnetic interference to test the actual combat ability of the troops and the equipment.
16 Qingtongsha military drill, which began last month, continues in northwest China's Ningxiahui Autonomous Region. In the latest stage of the live-fire exercise, self-propelled artillery guns and long-range rockets have been used for the first time. Each of China's 5 commands will send 1 artillery brigade to take part in the drill, which runs until the end of August. Authorities say they hope to improve the capabilities of organization and command, as well as the overall combat ability of troops.
On Tuesday, the annual Japanese Defense Review expressed deep concern over what they see as China's coercive takeover in the South China Sea. The report noted that it was particularly troubling that Beijing had decided to ignore international rulings holding that the area did not belong to China. The white paper from Japan's Defense Department comes less than a month after an arbitration court in The Hague invalidated China's sweeping claims in the disputed South China Sea.
Flood concerns at this hour tonight amid the storms hitting right now. It comes after that historic flooding in Maryland triggered by torrential rains. A human chain saving a woman, more than 100 others saved too. The power of that rushing water washing cars away as they were toys. The water tearing up the asphalt, this car almost buried underneath it. Ginger Z is standing by with the track of these new storms hitting right now, but first ABC's Gio Benitez with that dramatic human chain.
A desperate attempt to save a woman's life as a powerful flood engulfs Ellicott City, Maryland's historic district. This man first swept away by rushing waters, only to fight his way upstream to help form a human chain. 29-year-old Jamie Knight crawling out of her car window and finally pulled to safety. A simple message for those good Samaritans.
I'm grateful. I'm very thankful. I wish I knew his name.
This view from inside a restaurant, cars spinning downstream.
People started to freak out. So everybody was getting up and trying to figure out where to go.
Oh my God!
2 customers who went out into the storm lost their lives in what meteorologists are calling a 1 in 1,000 rain event.
Popular vacation spot off limits to pregnant women. The CDC issued a travel advisory for part of Miami after Florida confirmed more cases of the Zika virus.
Right now, Florida's governor has just announced that the number of Zika cases likely caused by local mosquitoes has risen to 14. Governor Rick Scott is asking for federal help. The new cases are clustered in the same square-mile neighborhood in Miami-Dade County.
There is an urgent and highly unusual new government warning out today for pregnant women after a jump in the number of confirmed cases of locally contracted Zika in South Florida. The 10 newly identified cases are attributed to homegrown mosquitoes and have affected a neighborhood in Miami, a neighborhood the CDC tonight is urging pregnant women to avoid. Right now, an aggressive Zika testing program is underway there, along with a stepped-up offensive against mosquitoes. Even so, health officials admit there are likely many more undiagnosed cases. NBC's Kerry Sanders has the latest from Miami.
Densely populated Wynwood district in Miami is tonight a no-go zone for pregnant women. The announcement today that there are 10 more suspected cases of homegrown Zika for a total of 14 cases makes it too dangerous.
An anthrax epidemic is wreaking havoc in western Siberia 75 years after the most recent outbreak. And scientists believe a thawed reindeer carcass may be to blame. According to Russian media, officials say they believe the animal in question died from anthrax decades ago. And thanks to a heat wave currently affecting the normally cold region, the carcass thawed and released anthrax spores. The highly contagious disease quickly made its way to the Yamal Peninsula's reindeer population, killing more than 1,500 of the animals, and it soon reached the humans around them. The Siberian Times reports as of Monday, at least 72 people, 41 of them children, are under observation in the hospital. Doctors have confirmed 8 of those patients have anthrax, and a 12-year-old boy has died. Anthrax is caused by bacteria called Bacillus anthracis. Both humans and animals can contract the disease by coming into contact with its spores. They can be breathed in, contaminate food and drinks, and enter open wounds. Anthrax can stay dormant in dead bodies for years and spread to any living organisms they're exposed to. And depending on the type of exposure, the mortality rate varies from 20 to 80%.
Hundreds of thousands of Nepalese are struggling to recover from the deadly earthquake that hit the country in April last year. 9,000 people were killed and over 20,000 injured after a cataclysmic 7.8 magnitude quake that shook the country, damaging more than 800,000 homes and leaving about 500,000 families without shelter. Many locals who borrowed money to fix or rebuild their homes from scratch are now at risk of being trafficked or duped into selling their kidneys to cover their debts.
Based on our research reports, the most important priority right now is cash, housing, and food. 3 things. That's all they need right now. And however they can buy that, if it's selling their kidneys or selling themselves, for example, they have no other choice.
Over a year after the devastating earthquake, reconstruction has been slow and uneven in Nepal. Many Nepalese are still languishing in tarpaulin tents while the rainy season is at its peak. Nepalese have been going through some highly dramatic times in the past 15 months.
I've returned to Nepal from the Middle East to help my family after the quakes. Our home was totally blown away. The situation is so bad that I'm afraid I will have to leave again soon.
Actually, it's a delayed and not serious commitment from the government. So we can see that the priority for the political parties was to their party, not the country, not the people who are affected from this devastating earthquake. We could not develop program, reconstruction activities, yearly program timely.
After the deadly quakes, India imposed an unofficial border blockade at its border with Nepal. This caused more than 20,000 big and small industries to close, pushing almost 1 million more Nepalese into poverty. Furthermore, recent floods and landslides have killed more than 70 Nepalese, with over 1 million residents forced to flee their homes.
Farmers doing their best to shoo locusts off their farms, but their efforts have little impact. This has been the situation in Madagascar since April 2013. The government has embarked on a program to keep the infestation under control. In the southwest, which is the heart of the locust plague, Cyclone Haruna, which struck Madagascar in February 2013, has worsened the situation, not only causing considerable damage but also improving the locust breeding conditions for a longer period than usual. Now, rice and other crops are at risk of considerable damage, which can have a wider impact on domestic supply and cereal prices. Depending on its size and density, a locust swarm can consume up to 100,000 tons per day of green vegetation. Given that the locust-affected regions account for 50% of the total agricultural land under rice cultivation and more than 60% of the total rice production, the potential damage that large swarms can inflict on cropland and pastures can be devastating.
Russian President Vladimir Putin.
The Islamic State militant group has called for more terror attacks against Christians. The cover of the latest issue of the group's Tabik magazine, released on Sunday, shows an ISIS member ripping a cross off the roof of a church with the title "Break the Cross." In the magazine, ISIS calls on others to join the terror group and for its members in West.
Less than a full day after the Islamic State militant group called for more terror attacks against Christians and launched a bizarre attack on the Pope, the extremist militant group is now threatening to kill.
The Islamic State militant group calls for more terror attacks against Christians through its propaganda magazine. This follows the killing of a priest in France, which has sparked fears ISIS wants to incite a religious war.